Good morning, 7th grade. How are we doing? This week for our video, we are going to be continuing on with the concept of proportionality and proportional relationships. But this time, instead of we've done tables, we've done graphs, and now the last thing is we need to do equations. So we're going to be looking to see are proportional relationships or can they be modeled by an equation. So without further ado, let's get to the video.
Alright, 7th graders, so there's a couple things that we want to remember before we get moving into trying to find and represent proportional relationships with equations. So first, a couple points to remember. It's important to remember that proportional relationships have a constant ratio or unit rate, okay, rate of change. And then it's also important to remember that the constant ratio or unit rate can also be called the constant of proportionality, as in y over x. I'm going to add in another point here. The constant of proportionality is represented by the letter k. So in this case, I can say that k equals y over x. But if I'm trying to write this as an equation, I want to represent this in a different way. So another way that I can represent this is if I can change it to be y equals k over x, or k times x. So y equals my constant of proportionality times my x values. And that's going to be really important for us today when we are trying to write equations based off of our situations, because that is exactly how we're going to write them. So our first problem, which might be a little bit cut off for some, but I will make sure to read it for everybody. Your mother has accelerated onto the interstate beginning a long road trip, and you notice that the low fuel light is on, indicating that there's a half of a gallon left in the gas tank. So I'm going to highlight that there is a half gallon left in the gas tank. The nearest gas station is 26 miles away. So that's important to know. So half tank, 26 miles to go. Your mother keeps a log where she records the mileage and the number of gallons purchased each time she fills up the tank. Use the information in the table below to determine whether you will make it to the gas station before the gas runs out. You know that if you can determine the amount of gas that our car consumes in a particular number of miles, then you can determine whether or not you can make it to the next gas station. So let's use this information to try to help us out here. So find the constant of proportionality that represents and explain what it represents in this situation. So I know that the constant of proportionality can be found by doing y divided by x. And in this case, my miles driven are my y values and my gallons are my x values. So all I have to do is 224 over x, or over 8, I'm sorry. Over 8, I can see what that equals. I could also do 280 divided by 10 and see what that equals. Or I could do 112 divided by 4 and see what that equals. But regardless, I know that each time my constant of proportionality is going to be 28. Now in this case, this 28 means that I can travel 28 miles for every gallon of gas. So 28 miles per gallon. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. Write an equation that will relate the miles driven to the number of gallons of gas. In this case, I remember that I know that k equals y over x, but I can also write them as equations with my constant proportionality, where it's y equals my constant proportionality, my unit rate, my rate of change, my rate times x. So in this case, I remembered that my k was 28. So in order to write an equation for this, I can just do y equals 28x. And there's exactly that. So let's move on to C. Knowing that there is a half of a gallon left in the gas tank when the light comes on, will she make it to the nearest gas station? Explain why or why not. Well, if she gets 28 miles per gallon per 1 gallon, and there's only a half of a gallon left, that means in a half gallon, she would be able to travel 14 miles. So in this case, since the nearest gas station is 26 miles away, she will not have enough gas. No, she will travel 14 miles, not 26. All right. Let's go on to our next slide. Using the equation found in part B, which is y equals 28x, determine how far your mother can travel on 18 gallons of gas. And remember, our x represents gallons, and our y represents distance. Solve the problem 2 ways. One using the constant proportionality, and once using an equation. So, using my equation, all I have to do is, my distance is y equals 28 times 18. And using just arithmetic, I could just do 28 times 18. For both of them, I end up getting 504 miles. So I know that she can travel 504 miles. And that's on 18 gallons of gas. Let's look at question E. Using the constant of proportionality and then the equation found in part B, determine how many gallons of gas would be needed to travel 750 miles. So I know my constant proportionality was 28 equals y over x. I could also look at this like, let's see, y equals 28 times x. In this case, y was my distance, so I know I need to substitute in 750 for y. So now in order to solve for x by itself, 28 miles per gallon, I just need to divide by my constant rate, my constant proportionality. I do 750 divided by 28. And that is going to give me 26.8 gallons. So I would need approximately 26.8 gallons in order to drive 750 miles. So that's our first kind of example problem where we had to use the constant proportionality in order to make an equation and help answer some questions about our real life scenarios. So let's do another example. And again, I will read this for you as well. So, Andrea is a street artist in New Orleans. She draws caricatures, which are cartoon-like portraits of tourists. People have their portrait drawn and then come back later to pick it up from her. The graph below shows the relationship between the number of portraits she draws and the amount of time in hours she needs to draw them. So, let's go to the first question. Write several ordered pairs from the graph and explain what each ordered pair means in the context of the graph. It's important for us to note that an ordered pair is any dot that is on this line, and it's our coordinates there. So I can look at it like this. So I can go to the right 4 and up 6, and that is a point right there. So I know one ordered pair is 4, 6. And that means in 4 hours, she can draw 6 portraits. Draw 6 portraits. Let's try to look for another one. So if I go over 6 and up 9, I can see that in 6 hours she can draw 9 portraits. I can even look lower than that. I could look at after 2 hours, she can draw 3 portraits. Okay? These are all important things for me to know. So, let's move to part B. Write several equations that would relate the number of portraits drawn to the time spent drawing the portraits. So in this case, I need to figure out what my constant of proportionality is. And in fact, I could use my coordinates and make an XY table. So I'm going to use 2, 4, 6 as my X values. And let's see, it was 3, 6, 9. So what I'm going to do is I have 3 over 2, 6 over 4, 9 over 6, and that actually all equals 1 1/2 or 3 over 2, because I know that my constant of proportionality is 3 over 2. So if I wanted to, I can write an equation. Remember, y equals kx. In this case, it'll be y equals 3 halves x, where y would be the number of portraits, and x would be time. So, determine the constant proportionality and explain what it means in this situation. We already did that. We know that our constant of proportionality, or k, equals 3 halves or 1 1/2. And in this situation, it means that Andrea can complete 1 1/2 portraits in an hour / 3 portraits in 2 hours. So that's pretty much our lesson for today. So let's wrap it up with the lesson summary. If a proportional relationship is described by the set of ordered pair that satisfies the equation y equals kx, where k is the positive constant, then k is called the constant of proportionality. The constant proportionality expresses the multiplicative relationship between each x value and corresponding y value. Essentially what that is saying is, if we are trying to write a constant proportion or a proportional relationship equation, in this case it would be y equals k, our constant of proportionality, times our x value. And that is our video for today. So feel free to write any questions that you have down in the chat below, or you can message me on Schoology or any other way that you can reach me. But until next time, I hope that you have a great day, and I hope that you learned something from this.